Okay, welcome back to the second episode of our new podcast, Awkward Christian Questions.
Oh, I'm so awkward.
Oh, well, are you ready to get after it again, honey?
Yeah, excited to be here.
For those of you who have not met my ethereal co-host and wife, Grace, Grace, welcome back. You know, last time we talked a little bit about who you were and our family, I believe, but we didn't talk about what you do for a job. Do you want to tell people what it is that you do for a job?
Yeah, well, thanks, honey, first of all, for calling me ethereal. That's quite a compliment.
Right? That's a big word, man.
Kind of funny.
Had to
I'm
reach
like,
for that one.
I feel like I need to float into the room now. But anyway, what do I do for a job? I work at a local nonprofit called Faithful Friends, and what I do is I match at-risk kids with caring adults who invest in their lives for at least a year or more by meeting with them weekly. I got involved with this because our family actually mentors a lovely little girl, and we have been for the last couple of years, and it's just been a powerful relationship for our whole family, and we just love this little girl, and so I really believe in the ministry and decided to get involved by working with them. That's right,
and you train mentors, and it's quite a process, as you can imagine. When you're dealing with minors, you got to go through all the background checks and the training.
Yeah, so we do it takes about 20 hours to become a mentor. We do a pretty extensive training, background checks, fingerprints. I go to people's homes.
Colonoscopy.
Colonoscopy.
Not quite.
I also go to the kids' homes. So it's a really interesting job in that I get to see the way a lot of different people live, and I get to talk to people from all walks of life. It's been just really wonderful to see different perspectives, different cultures, and it's helped grow my understanding and compassion.
Yeah, it's awesome, important work. Not as important as my work of making dumb jokes on Twitter.
That's totally important.
That's more important, but it's still important. Okay, well, our life's been a little chaotic recently. I'm sorry. Since we're both working, we got 3 kids, various ages, 6, 10, and 13. They're very demanding. We got a ton of family in the area, which is great, but comes with its own demands.
Yep. And
aging
you decided
parents.
to add a dog.
And then we thought, you know what? Our life is not chaotic enough. You know what it needs in addition to the kids and the cat, by the way? We need a puppy.
Yes. So Drew's wanted a little golden retriever puppy for a long, long time. And we always thought, we'll wait until we have some land. But we realized that's not going to happen. And we decided to get the dog anyway. And he's the cutest thing you've ever seen.
Yes.
He's so adorable, but he is terror.
His 2 favorite things are biting and pooping inside.
Yeah. So
we're working on that, though.
He's only 13 weeks. He's really small, but he's Drew's dog.
Yes.
Just would like to make that clear to everyone listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
This is Drew's
and
dog.
And I am responsible for taking care of him. Okay, well, let's get to it. A little bit of small talk.
Yeah.
Have the folks at home get to know us. But let's get into our awkward Christian question of the day. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think this is a good one because it's pretty common from what I've heard. Okay, so here it is. What do you do when you disagree with your church on what might be called a secondary theological issue? Now, let me clarify this a little bit because that can be confusing. We're not talking about the big stuff, right? If your church doesn't believe that God exists, right? Or, I don't know, they don't believe that Jesus rose from the dead. Well, that's a problem. Those are big primary theological issues. So if your church doesn't believe in those, guess what? You got to get out. You got to get a new church. That's bad news. But what we're talking about here are smaller but still important issues. I don't want to minimize them either. So I'm talking about issues that passionate Christians might disagree about.
Yes.
Method of baptism is one, okay?
Sure.
Should you sprinkle or immerse? Do you baptize babies or just adults? Another one is women in ministry.
Yep.
Hugely important. Not trying to minimize it, but it is not something that all Christians everywhere throughout the centuries have agreed upon. And so people have different beliefs about that. Or here's another one, spiritual gifts. Mm-hmm. Should you speak in tongues? Is speaking in tongues evidence of being filled with the Spirit? Those are controversial issues, even though they are not the primary issues of importance in the Christian faith. So what do you do, though, when you find yourself out of sync with the leadership and the positions that your church has on one of those issues. I'm going to give my opinion first, okay?
Okay.
Then you
great.
come in with the truth at the end, okay?
I don't
you
know
can
about
solve
that,
it.
but I'd love to hear what you think about this. This is such a big issue, actually, because oftentimes you don't even know what those secondary issues are until you've been at a church for a little while.
Right. And you don't know their stance on those issues. And then they don't, usually put that on their website or
Yeah.
tell you right up front, but then you discover them. And then if you don't find yourself on the same page, it can be awkward. Okay. Well, I think just a few aspects to this. I think the first thing to acknowledge is I don't think you have to sacrifice your beliefs. I don't think you have to be intellectually dishonest because I know some people think, well, I just have to believe the same thing as Pastor Bob believes on this, whether it's, women in ministry or spiritual gifts or end times things or you name it, right? No, I think, you arrived at these beliefs and convictions, hopefully because you studied the Bible. This is what you believe about God, believe about the church, whatever the issue is. These aren't salvation issues, capital T truth claims. It's how you read the Bible and understand God, and you don't have to give that up. But then there's a second thing here, and this is an important balance. You don't want to be divisive about them either.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to create chaos and get people fighting over it, because I have seen so many churches torn apart by dumb issues, right? I mean, things far less important than we're talking about. The color of the carpet in the foyer, right? You name it. So it demands a lot of wisdom in how you're going to talk about these things, if you're even going to talk about them. And I actually like the approach that our church takes to this. They're pretty explicit about it, actually, because when you go through the membership class, they say, okay, on these issues, you can hold different beliefs, but please don't be divisive about it. In other words, don't go around pushing it, trying to undermine the church's position on it. And that's harder than some people think, because you kind of think, well, I think I'll change people's minds. I think I'll change the culture of my church on this issue. I'll change the leaders' minds, and I can kind of push my agenda and get things and persuade them to change in this area. But our church is like, hey, that's great if you hold those different positions, but please don't make it an issue. Okay, those are some of the, I don't know if that's like a position, but some of the issues involved. Grace, what do you think? What do you do?
Well, honey, I actually totally agree with you. I think that was a really good summary and kind of just setting the stage for how to approach this issue. I guess I would say that in my perspective, if there are secondary issues in the church that are really important to you and you need the church to be on the same page as you, you should probably leave.
Wow. Okay, so if you, not only are you at odds, but it's so important to you, you feel like, hey, this could be a deal breaker, then you're saying, get out.
Yeah, if it's something pretty central to your core beliefs, like, for example, the issue of women in ministry, if that's like a really important issue to you and you need to have a church that supports you in those beliefs, then you should probably find a different community. But I also really like what you said about trying to aim for unity. In this country, we have so many denominations. It's almost like all these little entrepreneurial churches that have started their own brand. And I think as a parishioner, as someone who attends the church, first of all, you have to recognize that you are coming into an established group of people that have already sort of set up what they believe. Mm-hmm. And if you aren't on board with that, instead of trying to change everybody, you probably need to be the one that leaves.
But you always need one more denomination. What?
Oh, goodness. We have so many denominations. So that's the other thing is I would say seek to have unity. Mm-hmm. Be willing to not necessarily be intellectually dishonest, but just be willing to be quiet about some of your beliefs that might differ when it's not central to you. But if it is something that is really heavy on your heart, that you feel like, no, this is something important and I really need to make this line in the sand, then you probably need to leave.
Okay, just play devil's advocate though. Say you are passionate about a secondary issue.
Yeah.
And you'd really love to see this church change. Is there any sort of option to make your case, make your appeal, again, not divisively going around to people and going, hey, undermining what the church leaders are saying about this, but maybe going to the church leaders and saying, hey, I think actually, if you carefully read the Bible on this topic, there's a case to be made for this position.
I mean, you can try that, but it's probably not going to go very well.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. Usually it doesn't, but you never know. And I think that's the thing to do, though. If you are going to say something, is you make it to the leadership, the people who can actually enact changes. And if they're not going to budge, or if they're not open to that, and you're that passionate about it, maybe you do go somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think this is especially maybe hard for people that have grown up in a particular denomination, a particular church, and they feel like this is their like family of origin. Right. And they really need to get everybody on the same page as them. I might be a little bit different because I've moved so many times. We've lived in so many different places. I've seen so many different iterations of Christianity, from Anglicanism to, Assemblies of God to everything in between.
Mm-hmm. We've been kicked out of so many churches.
We have not been kicked out of any churches, but I've not agreed with every single element in some of these churches' theology, but I've been willing to ask myself, can I worship with these people? Can I be in relationship with them? And if the answer is yes, I'm just willing to sort of not talk about those things. Now, I think one thing that is even more important sometimes in the secondary beliefs is the healthiness of the leadership. Yeah. If they're healthy people, and they're not trying to put everyone under their thumb. Right. I think you can live in an environment where you have a diversity of beliefs. But if you come from the type of community where the pastoral leadership is making everyone conform to their leadership, to their particular beliefs on all of these secondary and tertiary issues,
yeah, that's a red flag.
Doesn't allow for intellectual freedom on some of those less important theological matters. Yeah, that's a red flag.
Yeah, because if they are healthy, then you'd think they wouldn't be so threatened by different opinions that, again, fall within the bounds of Christian orthodoxy. These aren't like, heretical positions, that they might have some grace and some room for those things.
Yeah, but really, how often do some of these issues come into play in our normal lives?
Yeah, and often they're like proxy wars for personality conflicts too. Yes. That's what I find. We can fight over anything if we really are determined to. Okay, that's good. Now we're gonna talk to an expert. Not that we're not experts, of course, but someone who's even more experty on this topic and see what they think. Yeah. That's up next. All right, but first, actually, before we get to that, it's time for our segment we call The Last Thing You Want to Hear. This is just a silly thing, okay? But
I like these segments.
You like these? Okay, well, let's see if you like it after this. But since we're talking about the church and conflict and church leaders, this is going to be the last thing you want to hear from your pastor.
Oh, okay.
The seven things you don't want to hear from your pastor, essentially. Okay, so number one, wish we had a drum roll. The last thing you want to hear from your pastor is, we need to talk about your giving. Ooh, that's bad. Yeah. If you hear that, obviously, first of all, you've been slacking a little in the giving department. Secondly, that's kind of a red flag if they're trying to squeeze more money out of you. Okay. Number two, the second thing that you do not want to hear from your pastor is, well, technically that's a heresy. Because then maybe you're a heretic. I will say, though, this is one of the reasons I'm not a pastor, okay? Because when you're a pastor and someone comes to you with some harebrained, weird, heretical idea, you know what you have to say? You can't say that's weird and harebrained and heretical. You have to say, oh, brother, that's really interesting. Or sister, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to pray about it. Like you have to have those soft
and that's
people
probably
skills.
Why you're not a pastor.
No, exactly, because I can't do that. I'll be like, no, that's dumb. No, you're an idiot.
I remember when we were dating, one time I spouted some kind of heresy that I thought I invented. And Drew's like, actually, that's technically heresy.
I hit you with this line?
You did.
Oh, man.
And I was like,
we got to edit this out. We got to edit this out.
And I was like, what do you mean? And then you showed me, I was like, oh. I guess it is, because some heresies,
they sound pretty good.
They kind of sound pretty good.
They're heresies for a reason, because people thought them up.
So I think there's also just an element of like, we're all sort of on a journey of understanding. And as a pastor, you have to have a little grace with people.
Light the match is what I say. Okay. Yeah. The third thing you do not want to hear from your pastor is, we've had some complaints about what you did in the bathroom.
Ooh, what's going on there?
I'm just thinking, you spend too much time. Maybe do that at home. Okay,
How did that even come into your head?
I don't know, but I'm leaving it in there. Number four, the fourth thing you don't want to hear from your pastor is, do you have a truck?
Oh, that's so true.
Okay, most people won't get this unless they've been in church life.
That's so true.
But I had the misfortune of having a truck as a young man. And I'd get calls all the time like, okay, this person's moving. They need a truck. Can you help out? And I didn't realize it, but I was signing up for a full-time, almost unpaid job. So
Yes, that. And also, can you move all the worship equipment every week?
Right. Okay, the fifth thing you do not want to hear from your pastor is, you looked very peaceful this Sunday. Do you get this one?
No.
Okay, it means you were sleeping during the sermon.
Oh, okay.
I caught you dozing. They don't want to say it directly. Again, those soft skills that pastors have, they're kind of just letting you know they caught you napping. The sixth thing you do never want to hear from your pastor is, we need your help in the nursery.
I don't know. I like hearing that.
Okay, I guess so.
I love the babies.
It
I want to
bends.
hold all the babies.
Yeah, maybe the babies. The 2-year-olds are tough. We had a long stint in the nursery, and they were very sweet, but a lot of energy. And of course, it's like a petri dish in there. You're going to get sick. You just got to know that going in.
Yeah.
But it's very beautiful, awesome ministry. And I would love to say I signed up for it, but actually, Grace, you signed me up.
Up for it, and then you come along sometimes.
But one flesh, right? Okay, the last thing and the seventh thing, the last thing you want to hear from your pastor is, we feel God is calling you to another church.
But if it gets to that point, he probably is.
He probably is. And he told you through the pastor, and that means we're sick of you. Get out of here. Okay. Well, again, man, we are so fortunate. Brand new podcast. We're on our second episode. We have another sponsor.
No way.
Yeah. Isn't that incredible? We're just rolling in the dough here. I won't even tell you how much they paid us, but here it goes. Okay, I'm just going to read it. This episode is brought to you by the Manly Men's Christian Conference. Join us this December in the Montana wilderness for a restorative time of reconnecting with your Creator and your inner warrior.
Inner warrior?
Yes, there will be fishing, hiking, axe throwing, cold plunging, chest thumping, waterboarding, bear wrestling, and of course, feasting on raw animal organs.
Oh, wow.
All the things Jesus would do if he was walking the earth today. Sign up now and use the code SAMSON to get 30% off.
Sign me up.
No, you're not invited. You are not invited. And I wish they would, ask me to come and speak, because I think that would be my jam.
You want to eat some
I'm
raw
a guy's
liver?
guy. No. Just there for the speaking. I don't know if I could do the waterboarding and the bear wrestling, but there we go. Thank you,
oh my goodness,
Manly
that's
Men's
so funny.
Christian Conference, for your generous sponsorship. All right, everyone. I am so excited to have Todd Miles join us to help us delve a little deeper into this question. Todd is a professor at Western Seminary. He's also written several books. And I got to mention the one title, Cannabis and the Christian. Todd, I know you've gotten probably a lot of, maybe not everyone is as immature as me, because I remember when this released, I went online and made some really dumb jokes about how it received high praise from readers.
Yes.
I couldn't resist. But it's a great book. And this is one of my favorite books that you wrote. I think this was like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Superheroes Can't Save You. Epic Examples of Historic Heresies. That was a great book with a great cover as well. So check that out if you are interested in Todd's work. But what I want to talk to you about, Todd, is this question. And I guess we'll start here.
Okay.
Can you help us understand the difference between, and maybe there's more differences between, what people might consider core theological issues and secondary or tertiary theological issues?
Yeah. I will give it my best shot, and
Okay.
I'll probably use a little different language than what you did there. The taxonomy that I use here at Western, that I picked up from my colleague Gary Brashear, is that there are some doctrines that are worth dying for. That is, you have basically left the boundaries of orthodoxy, and you are in no way discernibly a Christian in your confession. And so hopefully church doctrinal statements are full of die for type things. And then there are some doctrines that are worth dividing over. That for whatever reason, the scriptures are just not as clear, or we just can't agree. It's probably a me problem and not a scripture problem. And even though we would not say about these issues that you are not a Christian if you deny them, but we probably can't worship together. There's lots of things that we could do. It might not even interfere with friendship. It probably shouldn't interfere with friendship, but we probably can't worship in the same local church together. And then I can give some examples of each of these if that would be helpful, but I'll go through the 4 categories. So we've done die for, divide for, and then there are some doctrines that are worth debating for.
Hmm.
You might have great conviction on these, and they might really fire you up, but it should not interfere with local church worship. That we can be a part of the same local church, and then there are some doctrines. Um, they're not even worth debating for. They're just doctrines to decide for. I really don't care about what you think about them. I might have my convictions. I might not. I just don't really care about them as much. Doctrines to die for would be, Trinity. I think the inspiration of Scripture, um, the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, the hypostatic union, the kind of things that we find in the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, Chalcedonian Creed, that sort of thing. Um, Doctrines to divide for would be the things that have historically separated uh, gospel preaching churches, like the subjects and nature of baptism or mode of baptism, charismatic gifts, the difference in roles in men and women in ministry, things like that. Um, Doctrines to debate for, I think, could be something like timing and nature of the millennium,
Hmm.
um, that sort of thing. And then doctrines to decide for, I don't know, like what happens to my clothes during the rapture or something like that, right? Someday I might care. Right now, I don't that much. So anyway, that's the taxonomy. The thing about having a taxonomy, though, is it sounds really good in principle, but until you fill the categories up, it's not very helpful,
Hmm.
right? So you could have some people who would think, "Oh, I love that taxonomy," but if we disagree on what the die fors are, then we're kind of back at square one. But anyway, maybe if you could
That's
fit
no, that's very helpful.
fast into that, that's
Yeah.
how I approach it.
No, I love that taxonomy. That's really helpful. And yeah, and you gave some examples, and that's helpful as well. And yeah, because I think of like, people will talk about like, will my pet be in heaven, right?
Yeah.
That'd probably be in the, I don't know, what, debate or decide?
Debate or decide. Well, it depends on, are you talking about cats or dogs, I suppose?
That's right. And how much do you love your pet?
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, no, that's really helpful. And yet, okay, what would you say to someone though who says like, listen, you put, mode of baptism, or women in ministry in that second tier, the debate thing, but they think this is an incredibly important issue. What's your response to someone like that who thinks, man, this is so important that if you miss this, it has huge implications that kind of put into question your entire theology?
Yes, and I think that's the trap that we fall into a lot of times, unfortunately, and because I have very strong convictions on all of those divide for things because I go to a particular local church and I don't go to other particular local churches, right? Uh, I guess at that point I would make an appeal to church history.
Hmm.
I would say these issues that are part of the ecumenical councils, those historic Christian creeds, the church has been thinking about this for a long, long time. And something like the Nicene Creed or the Chalcedonian Creed I would argue they stood the test of time, and this is what definitionally the right way to think about the deity and humanity of Jesus Christ, the Trinity, that kind of thing. Um, or the Apostles' Creed is a great creed, certainly not written by the apostles, but I think representing the core theology of the apostles, that those who were commissioned by Jesus to launch this new covenant ministry based upon Jesus's life, death, resurrection, ascension, and imminent return. And so those are the kind of things that I would say historically, these are the divide fors. And um, if a person wanted to put something else into that die for category that I would argue has historically been a divide for, um, I would probably just say we're going to have to agree to disagree on this, and you're probably not going to want to go to my church, my local church, and that's okay.
Right.
Blessings
No.
upon you.
That's right. No, you're not going to probably argue someone out of.
On Twitter or X or whatever we call it nowadays.
That's right. That's funny because actually I've noticed last week on X, at least there's a very lively debate about baptism, and so and people get very passionate about. But that really makes sense about the debate for category, because it might be something where it's like, I'm not questioning your salvation. You're my brother or sister in Christ, and yet we just can't go to church because when it comes time to baptize someone,
That's right.
you got to either immerse that person or sprinkle them or whatever, and you have to agree upon that. And so it's just sort of a practical thing sometimes as well. Well, that's yeah. So I guess, what advice would you give to someone who maybe attends a church and they love it and they're all in on most things, and yet they disagree with that church or the church's leadership on a debate or
A
decide issue,
or divide for or whatever.
or
Yeah.
or even even the divide for,
Yes.
and they don't want to leave, and yet they don't want to compromise their convictions
Mhm.
on this point of theology. What's your advice for someone in a context like that?
Well, I guess I would ask them, can you submit to the leadership, and can you worship, and can you be an encouragement?
Mm.
Can you exercise your gifts for the mutual edification of others at that church? And if you can, for example, I know plenty of people, especially once they get out of the child rearing stage, who are Baptistic in conviction when it comes to the mode and subjects of
And
baptism.
does that mean, submersion? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yes. But they don't have to deal with that as a parent or anything, right? Because their kids are out of the house, and they just go to a Presbyterian church because that's where they feel the most blessed, even though they disagree on baptism. Now, hopefully, they can submit to the leadership and just think, or they could even tell the leadership, I disagree with you on this, but I'm not going to make a stink about it.
Mm.
And I want to submit to you, and in all other things, I suppose. And on baptism Sundays, I'll be there, and I'm trying to understand your theology, and I'll affirm in it what I can, and we'll just agree to disagree. But I'm not going to do so loudly. I'm not going to be divisive
Hmm.
over this. Um, you know, I I I suppose there have been plenty of people with egalitarian convictions who go to complementarian churches, um, and they're able to do so submissively, and they're blessed, and they're a blessing to others. Um, and so I guess that would be my advice. Can you worship? Can you submit? Can you use your gifts in the manner that they're supposed to be used for the edification of others in the church? And if you can, then I think that's okay. You don't. Uh, it's okay to agree to disagree. It's okay to be willing not to have your way on everything for the sake of the unity of the body of Christ, and especially on these divide fors. Now, if it's a die for thing, I would flee.
Get out of there.
That point,
Get
yeah,
out of there.
yeah,
Yeah.
because that's not something you should be compromising on. And historically, the church has understood that these core issues, and that's why I would make an appeal to church history: Nicene Creed, Apostolic Creed. These are things that inevitably affect the gospel. They affect your worship. They affect something as practical as prayer. And so, the theology matters. I'm actually writing an article right now on the enduring legacy of the Nicene Creed. And so,
Hmm.
and this is the point that I'm trying to make, is that the bishops who gathered at Nicaea, they were convinced that Arianism affected the gospel. It undercut it. It
Mm.
makes the gospel illogical and impossible if Jesus is not fully divine. And then worship and prayer follow as well. So
Yeah. That's good. And what, strikes me is that there's actually even like across the three branches of the church, right? Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, even though of course I'm Protestant for a
Mhm.
reason, but there is a remarkable consensus on some of these die for issues.
Yes, I agree, and I think that's testimony to those who have gone before us. And yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'm not one of these people who looks at all the different denominations and thinks that Jesus's Gethsemane prayer for unity in the church was just like answered from heaven with a resounding no, right?
Yeah.
I think that there is a unity in the church around these most important things, and we should defend those most important things and cling to them. And yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then when we get to the other side of everything, when we get to glory, we'll find out who was right on these secondary.
Yes, and thankfully at that point I will be glorified, fully sanctified, not proud, and so I will not rub other people. That's the entire time.
That's really too bad. I always say when someone that I know dies, the one silver lining is that they now know that I was right about all of our theological disagreements.
I know. That's exactly right.
Well, Todd, thank you so much. That helps, I think, give a little more framework for this. And I love your advice too about, hey, if you can worship there, and you can kind of lay this aside. And if I'm hearing you correctly, don't launch like an underground campaign to undermine the church's teaching on that topic. Then, hey, you can worship there if it's on one of those debate or decide kind of issues.
Or divide for.
Or divide for. Yeah, even the divide for ones.
Yeah, I'm not sure that any Baptist should show up at Presbyterian churches hoping to change the mode of baptism.
Right. That's not going to go well. That's going to end poorly. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I know our listeners will appreciate it too. There's some real wisdom and perspective there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Drew.
And now it's time for the final word. Okay, well, recently I was doom scrolling, as they say, on Instagram. And I saw a post from a guy celebrating the fact that he and his family had given up on church. And the reason he was celebrating, they were still believers, still loved Jesus, but they just found that church wasn't giving them much. It was inconvenient, really wasn't working for them. And they had a video with the post where they were kind of like strolling through this beautiful forest on a Sunday morning. And he felt pretty liberated from the whole thing. And I guess he had a point in the sense that it's a lot easier to go for a hike on a Sunday morning or just sleep in. Done that plenty of times. So I think it raises the question, though. It's like, okay, so why is it so important to go to church?
Yeah.
And a while ago, I posted that question online because I was curious to get some feedback from some of my online friends. And I got a lot of response. I was actually surprised. The floodgates really opened. One person responded. They said, I go to church because those bulletins are not going to read themselves. And so there were some serious ones as well, though. And most of them emphasized the importance of community. Here's one from Glenna Marshall that I really like. She said, isolation tells you being alone is safer, but isolation is a liar. God knew we would need others, so he gave us the church.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Amber Benson had a similar point. She says, when you want community least is when you need it the most. The people who responded to the question, they didn't view the church either through rose-colored lenses. Like they readily acknowledged the challenges presented by being part of a community of imperfect people, but they believed it was worth it anyway. Dave Gibson wrote this, anyone can worship alone in the woods. But you really have to love God to put up with the broken, wandering people who show up to worship with you on a Sunday. Worship is a way you show love for God and serve others. It was never about what you get out of it.
Yeah.
And then, this is cool. The popular Bible teacher, Beth Moore, responded to my question. And yes, that is a name drop.
Yeah.
And she responded with just one word. She wrote, incarnation. And I had to think about that one for a second, but I believe she's right. Because when you consider that God showed up in the flesh for us, it makes sense that we would show up for each other in community.
I like that.
I remember hearing a pastor open a service by extending an unusual invitation. He said, maybe you're here, but you're too weak to worship. That's okay. If you're in that place, you don't have to do anything. We'll worship for you. We'll pray on your behalf. Let the body of Christ carry you for a while.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't that gorgeous? I love it because that's how the body works. Sometimes you carry others and sometimes they carry you. Being a part of a church isn't easy. You're going to disagree on things, secondary, maybe even primary theological issues. It's not always easy to make it out to church. It requires planning and intentionality. It takes sacrifice. You have to put up with weird people and they have to put up with you. But at the end of the day, for those reasons, I believe it's worth it. Well, if you enjoyed this conversation, please leave us a rating or a review on Apple or Google Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. Or just walk out your front door and shout to your neighbors that you're listening to a new podcast and they have to check it out.
Awkward Christian questions.
And that'd be an awkward thing to do. Thank you for listening. And until next time, stay awkward.